I'm here today with Alex George. Alex, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm good. It's we're doing this on a Monday morning. I feel fresh and ready for the week ahead.
At what point do you feel weary?
It's a good question. Probably 4 o'clock on a Friday. I think you're just at that point. You're kind of like, right, I'm ready for the weekend. You're recharged, ready for Monday morning. But I love Monday because it's like that opportunity feeling, isn't it? It's a new week. I've learned to try to hit Mondays in the right mindset. Otherwise, if you start in a negative frame of mind on a Monday, it's very hard to kind of catch yourself up, isn't it?
Listen, I'm on board with that. Mondays are awesome days. You've been doing incredible work with mental health campaigns, and it's going fantastic. What would you feel is your biggest achievement so far, and why?
So I think for me, my life mission is effectively in my head is to make mental health matter. That's what I care about. And one of the things that I've realised, certainly through my years in A&E, seeing people struggling in A&E departments, is that people come in not just because of physical health problems, but mental health issues too. And I think people often think with any illness that it's never going to happen to me. It's not a problem for me, or my mental health's great. And that's why I kind of get frustrated sometimes when people say, 1 in 4 people have mental health. If you're sat there listening to this, you've got a heartbeat, I'd assume. So you've got physical health, and hopefully you're awake and cognitive. So you have mental health. Everyone has it. It's very much a spectrum. Great mental health on one side, where most people really achieve great mental health all the time. The other side, mental illness. And what I want to achieve in my work is to get everyone to realise effectively that no matter where you are on the spectrum, there is a benefit. Indeed, there's a benefit in investing time in your mental health, whether you want to be more productive, whether you want to enjoy life more, whether you are struggling, whether you've got family, you've got friends, we can all improve. So I guess in terms of my biggest achievement, I hope I brought it onto the political agenda. I hope I've made that conversation more forefront. And I think, my day-to-day achievements, I think I've just come off the back of doing a school tour for Children's Mental Health Week, and that for me is, going out to the schools, speaking to young people, hearing their stories, learning from them. That for me is, that's incredible. That's the best feeling ever when you speak to a young person and they say, I care about mental health. I'm enjoying learning about it. I want to improve how I feel. That for me is, nothing can top that, really.
And do you think the truth is actually this awareness is being driven down from the young upwards?
I think so. Interestingly, it's not the top down, it's the other way around. I think what we've seen is that actually in many ways, when we first started talking about recycling years ago, I remember when I was kind of in primary school, that recycling started becoming a thing, and all the kind of older people went, oh well, the young generations, they won't care about it, they won't be on board. Actually, I think there's young people at schools, literally primary school kids, going home telling their parents that this is important. And actually I think that's what we're seeing with mental health, is that for many years stigma has oppressed people's thoughts around this thing that we all have. Whereas I think young people, now that we've opened that conversation a bit, they're coming at it with a very fresh new perspective and a very positive perspective. I mean, it baffles me if you sit and Google, please don't do it now while we're chatting, but if you Google physical health, you'll see photos of, people running, men and women running in the park, blue sky, green grass, really crisp summer's day, really positive images. When you Google mental health, there's often a picture of someone sat there, head in their hands, the grayscale images. And it's just such a shame because there's just no need to see it that way. Yes, you can have bad mental health, but you can also have bad physical health as well. And the thing that's really important is that you can't have good physical health without good mental health. And what we've realized more and more now, and actually even as medics, we're really catching on, and we're really becoming much more aware of this, is that actually the two are so intertwined, you cannot truly separate the two. And I'll give some examples in both directions. I saw a gentleman in A&E, a footballer actually, a few years ago. I've stopped working in A&E now, but a few years ago, and he came in, he'd had a classic kind of football injury, tackled from the side angle, a force onto the outside of the lower leg, and he had a very nasty fracture of both the lower bones. And when he came in, it was obvious that it was broken, and he was in a huge amount of pain. So the nurse helped administer medication, helped with pain relief, got the x-rays sorted. I straightened the leg so that we could cast the leg ready for surgery. Now, once that was all done, I was stood at the end of the bed and I said, look, this is a nasty injury. It's going to need operation. The orthopedics are going to have to see you. You're going to have to go to surgery. And he started crying. And my first reaction was, oh, you're in pain. Let me get me some more painkillers. And he said, no, Alex, I'm not in pain. This is my life.
Yeah.
I love football. It's the reason I get up in the morning is football. What am I going to do without football for the next 6 months or a year? And it really struck home that we were so focused on this physical health problem, but actually something that had happened to him physically. He wasn't even worried about fixing the injury so much. It was his mental health. And another example, I mean, when people think of A&E, a classic thing they think of as heart attacks and us dealing with heart attacks in the hospital, and you think, wow, physical health problem, right? I mean, I remember seeing this was in the early years of working in A&E. I remember seeing this 60-year-old businessman came in a suit, smart tie, smart businessman, and he had crushing chest pain. He was sweating profusely. And I said to him, right, we're going to have, we think this is probably a heart attack. There's a test we're going to do. We did the blood test. Yes, he had a heart attack. As part of our investigation, we do a history taking. So we look back at a person's life to work out what's brought them to that point or what might have influenced it, what factors we can change moving forward. And it was really interesting because what I found out is that, okay, he'd had the heart attack today, but for the last 20 years, he'd had diabetes. So his blood sugar was poorly controlled, often associated or sometimes associated with being overweight or diet and so on. So yeah, he'd had diabetes for 15, 20 years. And we dug back a bit further and realized that effectively for most of his life, he'd been smoking, drinking a lot of alcohol, not doing a huge amount of exercise and overeating. Why? Well, when I questioned him and said, look, what do you think triggered this and this kind of lifestyle? Stress. He said, this is the way that I was brought up to deal with stress. My dad used to come home from work and have a drink. When he was stressed, let's say, of course, when he had a tough day, pour a glass of whiskey or, go out for dinner and things. He said, I was never taught about the importance of exercise or sleep or, thinking about these things. And so essentially what we're saying is that he had a heart attack on this day. When you dig all the way back into his 20s, when he started in this stressful career, he basically ended up in a situation because he wasn't given the right coping mechanisms. And I think it's so important for people to realize, because what we're really saying is that mental health struggle, that stress that you're dealing with, which was a mental thing, has then all those years down the line led to him having a blocked coronary artery. And I think it's really interesting because it gives you that kind of realization of that connection of the two. If we'd have instilled the right coping mechanisms of a balanced life in his 20s, I believe strongly that I would not have seen him on that day for a heart attack. Now, thankfully, we got the stent sorted for his coronary arteries. He made a very good recovery, but it might not have been the case, and it was, in my opinion, avoidable. And indeed, the diabetes would have been avoidable if we'd have made changes earlier on.
So when you look, and as you were giving these examples, what was going through my head is, if you take the companies who kind of through the pandemic have opened their eyes to kind of the mental health kind of society, I suppose. What more can they be doing that actually still kind of, I have that feeling from my generation over the fact that if I show weakness, kind of maybe I'm not going to get far enough ahead because people how can companies show, and I appreciate it's longer than a 10-minute chat, but is there one thing you can pinpoint that actually companies should be doing more right now?
Well, I think the first thing is a realization that it really does affect everyone. And I'm trying to say mental health is for everyone in the most positive sense as well. And I think whether you're a multinational company, whether you're a small business, whether you're an individual, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, if you can realize and harness the power of actually investing a bit in someone's mental health, you will realize the benefits over and over again. As an individual, you're better in relationships, you're better with your friends, you're better at your job, you can focus better. There's countless benefits of doing so. For a company, not just the ethical and moral aspect of creating an environment that's conducive for good mental health is an important thing, but also in terms of your business. We know that mental illness costs the economy billions a year in lost working hours, in lack of productivity. There's a lot of intangible costs as well that you can't just put down to time. It might be just a lack of, you might be physically present at your desk, but mentally not as present or making errors and so on. So there's a real clear benefit for the individual and the business to create that environment. So the question is, going back to that, how do we do that? One of the biggest things that I've suggested to many companies and schools and universities going back over the last for 4 years or so, is to start with a really person-centric approach and realizing that how do we create an environment where we well and truly care? What can we do that puts the individual at the center point? And if you do that, and you don't worry about too much about policy and all these different things, think about the individual person, and the knock-on effect is huge. So examples of doing that and bringing it to individual choice is, for example, at schools. I've been to schools where I've suggested that they have a mental health lead in the school. So a teacher who's designated to care, who does care and designated to think about mental health, the whole school approach, and then have students have an ambassadorship, 4 or 5 of the students who are passionate about it involved in that, and allow them to create a culture within that school, that university or workplace that allows you to create a better environment, because every environment's different. My workspace with my team is going to be different to someone else's company that's working at different challenges, different situations, different demographics, literally different place in the country potentially. So have people that care. Put them at the center point. Let them think about what we can do to create a better environment. Some places have, for example, gone, right, on a Wednesday morning at 8:30, we're all meeting for coffee and we're going for a walk before work. Indeed, it was a great idea started by the Lewisham Fire Service, a guy called Dan there, and I went out and I did a walk with them, and basically he realized that a huge amount of firemen, and we know a lot of the fire service is men, really, really struggling with their mental health and seeing a spike of things like suicide. So what he did is thought, right, we're going to get out walking every morning, every Wednesday at night. I think it's a Wednesday at 9 they do it, meeting at 9 o'clock and doing an hour walk. And what they do is at the start of the walk, they go around in circles, very, very quick. They stand in a circle and you say 1 to 10 how you're feeling, with 1 or 2 lines as to why you feel that way. And at the end of the walk, once they finish walking, they do the same. And when I went there, it was unbelievable. The people who've been doing it a few times, they were so much more open. They'd learned to talk about mental health. They were talking about why their week was good or bad. It was powerful because some people go, do you know what? I'm an 8 out of 10 this week because I've got to spend some time with the children. I did a bit of exercise. I slept well. So there's a lot of education going on. And what you're doing is you're getting all these people that work together to open up and have this deeper bond. And you know what? When you look at a football team or a rugby team or a netball team, the teams that perform the best are those who are genuinely teams. They care for one another and the end goal. So you create a real environment, not only that we're helping people as individuals, you're creating a real team environment. So often I say start with the basics, those fun, simple basics. Think about the people that are working for you. Have someone that's genuinely passionate to think about ways you can improve that culture, and listen to them. And then the other thing I would say is I really want, and it's something that it will happen. I'm pushing for at a government level. Every company should have mental health first aid trained staff. It's a day or 2 day course. Mental Health Foundation run it. You can really save lives. So create a culture, have a safety net of that training, and it's a real starting point. And enjoy it.
I did the first aid training course with
fantastic
mental health a couple of years ago, and it was just plugging it now. It was just the most incredible 2 day.
Yeah,
course. And
you know what, the number one thing, again, I've done not just talks like this, but I have visited and spoken to thousands of people now, thousands of all ages. And when it comes to either schools or universities and workplaces, if you ask the number one thing that worries a manager or a team leader, it's the mental health they start. Usually it's generally at a school. If you ask a teacher, what do you worry about? I worry about the kids self-harming or something happening at home, or that's what they worry about. It's not usually, I'm really worried about their exam grades. It isn't. It's not what keeps them up at night, is it really? And I'm sure people listening to this will say the same. It's not what keeps me up at night. You might worry about your work and achieving well, but that colleague at work you're worried about, that is what keeps you awake. So, that's, of course, gives you a lot of the tools you need to kind of help with that situation. And important point to say to anyone, even once you've done the course, it's not your job to fix someone. It's very, very important when you're approaching someone that's struggling, be a friend, don't fix. Indeed, when I talk about the 3 steps, there's a 3-step approach I advise to people. It's number 1, trust your gut. Gut instinct is incredibly powerful. Worried about someone, trust it. Ask twice. Us Brits always say, yeah, I'm fine. So approach it with, look, how are you, Nick? Yeah, I'm all right. But Nick, you say you're all right, but a gut instinct is not yourself. You're not quite yourself. Are you sure you're okay? And often that gives that person, even a man, an opportunity to open up and say if they're struggling. And the 3rd step is to signpost, don't fix. So know within your organization what support is available. Know outside of the organization where you can signpost people for help, and don't take on their weight on your shoulders. Your job is to be their friend. Just be a friend, stand by the side and say, I don't know everything you're going through, but you know what? together we'll work out the answers. And that is incredible, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you're running a business. If you can just be a friend to someone that's struggling, that is more than you ever need to be.
Alex, on that genuinely sage advice, thank you so much indeed for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking.
Thank you so much.